Okay, guys, welcome back to the Edible Garden Club. I'm going to hand it off to Andrea to take us through.
Okay, so yeah, everyone, welcome back. Today we are joined by Amy, who's a part of Sustainable Little Tokyo. And we're also joined, and we want to thank ASI for helping us promote this event. Next slide. So we're going to go through the agenda today. So we're just going to talk about a little bit about what the Edible Garden Club is. And then we're going to thank ASI and tell you a little bit about the Environmental Policy Committee. And then we're going to talk about our Bokashi giveaway. And then we're going to introduce our guest speaker, which is Amy. And then a little Q&A about her presentation after. And then announce the raffle winners, and then we'll do our closing. So moving on. So the Edible Garden Club. So this is a quote from our president, Alicia. So just a little sentence about what the Edible Garden Club is. It teaches students to grow organic and sustainable foods for the purpose of conducting research and empowering connections to environmental stewardship, food access, and community health. So that's basically what we're focusing on when you enter the Edible Garden Club. We have little presentations such as this. We have discussions on any topics that have to do with sustainability, food access, community health, and gardening. So next slide. So if you're here and you're new and you want to think about joining Edible Garden Club and as to why. So we offer a space to grow and have important discussions. So any meetings that we have, you're more than welcome to bring up any topics that are on your mind. And it's an open space for you to talk about it, get some questions about it, get some answers about it, or even teach people about the subject that you want to talk about. We also get to be a part of a new club at Cal State LA. So this club actually formed this year, so we're pretty new. And that is such an important thing to be a part of, especially something as important as learning about sustainability and food access, and also getting to be a part of the journey since we're actually implementing edible gardens on campus right now. So you get to have like a say or thoughts about what we're doing with those gardens on campus. We are also opening up for some leadership positions. So we're since we're pretty new, we're having new committees in development. So you get to be a part of like our board executive team. So you get to be either making decisions in the background or maybe having your ideas put on our social media, such as like Instagram. And also it is something cool to put on your resume. You get to put like, oh, like committee leader or certain leader of this committee or helped out with this project. So that's pretty cool. And if you want to join us, you could email us at our Gmail, which is ediblegarden.calcetla@gmail.com. Or you could DM us on Instagram, something as casual as that. Just give us a DM and be like, hey, can you tell us more about you? We don't want to be too formal. Just start a conversation with us, and we are more than welcome to answer any of your questions. And we are pretty much a new club, so we would love for you to come join us. We do have a tight knit in our executive committee, and we would just love to have someone come in and share the new ideas, expertise. So yeah. And then next slide. So Hannah, I don't know if you want to go over this for a bit. So this is your area.
Oh,
I think she's muted. Hannah, are you muted?
oh, we can't hear you, Hannah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Good.
Thank you for letting me know. My name is Hannah. I'm part of the Environmental Policy Committee, which is part of the student government at Cal State LA, ASI. EPC seeks to formulate and encourage the adoption of policies to make sure Cal State LA is more environmentally sustainable and educate the community on the topic of environmental sustainability and environmental justice. If this sounds interesting to you, we do have committee member positions available. You can join us next semester. We're going to be doing celebrations for Earth Week and Arbor Day. So yeah, I can send more information in the chat with the application. Or if any of you have questions, you can DM us on Instagram. The Instagram is CSULAEPC, or you can send me an email. My email's on the screen, asieac@calstatela.edu. So yeah, thank you for being here today, everybody. And I'll give it back to Andrea now.
Okay. And so as a thank you for everyone coming here, we're going to give away some raffle prizes. So thanks to Amy teaching us about our executive team about a little bit about Bokashi composting. We want to share that education and that like important doing your part in the community with you guys. So I think we're giving away three Bokashi kits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3 Bokashi kits. So in the chat, I think Hannah's going to put a link or like a form where you could input your information. I think you do have to be a Cal State LA student to win one of our 3 raffle prizes. So that'll be in the chat later on throughout the presentation. And at the end, we'll be announcing the winners. So hopefully you get your own little Bokashi kit and you learn a little bit throughout this presentation of how to use it. So yeah. And now I'm going to give the floor to Amy. Yes. So Amy's here to talk about basically sustainable Little Tokyo, and also about like Bokashi and like what it is. So if you're here to learn about that, Amy is your expert right here. She's going to tell us all about it. So yeah, take it away, Amy. Oh, Amy, you're muted.
Okay, now you can hear me. Thank you, Andrea. And if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Bokashi, but before we start, I just wanted to take a moment. I just finished listening to the LA County COVID-19 update, and I just kind of want to thank everybody for coming today, but recognizing the challenges that we all are facing either directly as a result of this virus or any other ramifications in terms of employment or just housing, that what we're doing today is maybe not critical, but it is critical to the earth. And I think that is a lot of value in at least learning about this topic. And for all of you that are gardeners here today, you know, it's also very restoring to work in a garden or to appreciate the outdoors. So, but thank you all for coming, given the challenges of this year, and I hope you are all well. So on that note, if we could go to the next slide, I'll show you what our outline is for today. So yes, welcome to you all, and thank you all for inviting me to come. I'd like to give a little bit of background of the organization that I represent, and then an appreciation, I think which you already all have, but of the urgency in recycling of food waste and recycling in general. And then I'll go into what is Bokashi, because it's a simple, easy method that I'm a fan of. So let's start with a little bit of background of the organization that I represent. So next slide. Okay, so I'm with an organization you can see on the bottom there called Sustainable Little Tokyo. And it's just down the street, the area that I'm talking about from Cal State LA, which Andrea didn't mention, but that is my alma mater as well. So I'm kind of in my home turf here, having been raised in Bull Heights and going to Cal State LA, and now working with this agency just down the street from Cal State LA called Sustainable Little Tokyo. And it's really made up of it's a coalition of 3 organizations, and one is called Little Tokyo Service Center, and it does do social services for the community. But some of you also might be interested that they have just completed a gymnasium, which would have opened this year, but is planned to open next year. But it'll be open to the public gymnasium right next to the Little Tokyo Public Library. So it'll be a place for everyone to enjoy. And then another organization is called JCCC, which is a cultural and community center. And maybe some of you have attended events there. It has a beautiful auditorium. But again, because of this year and not being able to have indoor events, their current event that they have online is called Ikebana at Home, which is flower arrangements, but they've been beautifully photographed. So if you go to the website JCCC, you'll see this great Ikebana exhibit online called At Home. And I'm vegetarian, so I kind of took taking the sample here of a vegetable ikebana arrangement there you can see in the upper right. And then the bottom organization that's also part of Sustainable Little Tokyo is representing the businesses and the residents that live in Little Tokyo and the many challenges they have been facing this year and earlier, which I think many in the community around Cal City know about gentrification and trying to maintain reasonable housing as well as small business owners. And so this year their project has been that there were maybe neighborhood grants and people who would make donations to the local restaurants who then in turn were able to produce meals for those that weren't able to afford food this year through the Little Tokyo community. So they have all been kind of focusing and changing because of the challenges of 2020. So that's kind of the background of Sustainable Little Tokyo. So next slide. So as you can see here, 7 years ago, this group came together and identified the need for an organization called Sustainable Little Tokyo. And so it is concerned about the sustainability of a very old community of Los Angeles, second oldest to Alvera Street. But it's concerned about the environment and the economics as the culture, which are all integral parts of Los Angeles history. So our goal has been to sustain Little Tokyo and its neighbors. Maybe some of you are familiar with every year, except for this year, we have an event that we would have been just last month called Fandango Bon, which combines fandango music and the traditional Japanese obon dance music to an event where you learn about fandango and obon and their instruments and culture and history. But that event was postponed and hopefully we'll have it early next year. So hope you all watch out for that event because it's fun. Okay, so next slide. So I guess we'll start with this one here. Okay, so before we get down into Bokashi, what really has been sustaining me is the bigger picture of why it's important on an individual basis that we recognize our role and that we're really part of a planet or an earth. And our earth really operates on carbon, whether it's carbon in the air or carbon in our ground. So carbon is very important, as you know, as gardeners, in the soil. So when you have carbon in the soil, it increases the fertility, makes air pockets, it helps to retain the water, and it helps to detoxify the soil as well. So just keep, that's kind of my little play on words to say, see the big picture, but it's really carbon, the big picture that we want to keep in mind. And you can see in the next picture or slide that really the whole planet emits CO2. And if you start, and you can see on the right that everything that lives is breathing. So when you breathe, you emit CO2. So everything on Earth is emitting CO2. The oceans, the organisms, all of our plants, and then the humans, not only do they breathe, but they have contributed more to the CO2 in the burning of the fossil fuels, in tilling of your soils. They are, in the past decade or century, has really significantly increased the amount of release of CO2 into the air. So, so we're all on the same function here, the whole Earth, emitting of CO2. But you can see on the next slide Um, maybe there should be one more slide. Oh, well, go back. This slide is missing part of the feature, but if you can go back for 1 second to the prior one, and go forward one. Okay, so this one here, you can see the numbers. You kind of have to remember these numbers here. So over 400 of the vegetation and land is emitting CO2, and the ocean is over 300. And really, people are emitting the 29. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. Oh, this is an error in the slides here. But I'll tell you how this slide should look. The oceans and the vegetation, not only do they emit CO2, but they photosynthesize so that they also return O2 and keep the carbon in the ground. So they all emit CO2, but because of the photosynthesis process, they take back the CO2 and give off O2 to us and put carbon back in the ground. But the humans, we don't photosynthesize. So all we do is we breathe and exhale CO2, and we create a lot more CO2 in terms of what we burn and how we till our fields. So all of our efforts to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we burn is good. But what we have already emitted remains in the air. So we really need to figure out how to get more of that CO2 or C back into the ground. So our role as gardeners is to minimize our tilling and plant more, because in support of the plants, then we will take back the CO2 and stick it in the ground. So that's really the important reason that we are trying to balance out our carbon cycle, is put the carbon back in the ground. Okay, next slide. Okay, so our Sustainable Little Tokyo, I would say its motto or its creed is called Motai Nai. And even in that circle over there in the Japanese, those marks there say Motai Nai as well. And if I were to translate the concept of Motai Nai, it's what we know as the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, recycle. And this applies in our CO2 use. So we try to reduce how much CO2 we create, and we try to recycle it by the process of no-tilling and by planting and putting the CO2 back into the ground. But what I really like about this Motai Nai concept is that we really like to include a 4th R on the next slide. And the 4th R is respect. And with the respect, it is recognizing that we are part of the earth. It's just not something that we actively take on to do these, but it's not because we're supposed to. It's because that is really the role in the bigger picture of being part of this earth and our responsibility of only using what you need and to reuse and to recycle. So given that mode, on the next slide, I'd like to add this slide in because I don't know how many of you know Wangari Maathai, but she is the African Nobel Prize awardee, the first African woman environmentalist. And the people in Japan were so impressed with her planting of trees in Africa that they invited her to Japan to speak. And I met the man that spoke with Wangari, and they were having a beer, he said. and he started saying this word motainai, and her eyes just lit up because she says this is really the concept that the whole world should live by is motainai. So even if you go to her website, which is the Greenbelt Movement, um, she still references motainai as really the concept of how we should coexist and be respectful of the planet. So that's really kind of an international concept. And of course, for our Native Americans, they are certainly uh, in respect and reverent to the earth. And I'm sure if any of you here know of your culture or ideas or words that talk about us coexisting with the world, I'd like to add more of these kind of phrases to make the concept really maybe relatable to everyone, and because it really is a universal idea we should be all living with. It's motainai. Okay, so as we apply this to Bokashi, okay, next slide. Um, we know that in general, throughout the world, but particularly in the Western world, that we are not recycling organic or inorganic waste. That this kind of shows you that it's ending up at the landfills, and that our landfills are filling up, and that even our neighboring or faraway countries that we would ship our recyclables to are also finally saying no more of your trash because it's trash. So on the next slide, we see that this is the same pattern happening with our food waste. So in the bottom left corner, you see you have your farmers, and we know that there is some waste there just on the farm, and then in transport, there's either damages or things that are not perfect enough for the market, which is in the upper left corner. We have efforts now in terms of food rescue, which is good. But as you can see in the cycle that then we come to your household, and this may have been looking like your household, especially for Thanksgiving, but a lot of the things that we thought were not edible, which, an orange peel or greens you wanted to chop away or peelings, they all ended up in the trash can. And unless you really thought about your trash can, you just pushed it out to the curb, and then you waited a day, and then you brought back an empty can. So it's the trash hauler then that is, they're having to make the decision or having to pay now. Where is that trash going? So as we know, even during these COVID times in my neighborhood, all my separated trash, I've been informed, I don't even need to separate it anymore. It's all just going to landfill. So, this has really not been a good year in terms of moving toward recycling. So, we have to really reduce our waste, our one-time use containers, and really look at this picture of what is happening at the landfills. Okay, so next slide. So at least for your organic waste, instead of a trash can in your kitchen, I'm going to show you today, we have, and someone will win this in the raffle, a collection bucket. So then you fill it up, and I'll show you in more detail how you use it, and then you quickly bury it. And then you will then put the carbon back into the soil, and you will have recycled all that organic waste, and made it into soil again for growing. So that's the picture. For me, I'm not a great grower, but the whole idea that I'm putting this back into the ground is enough motivation for me to continue doing this process. Okay, so next slide. So before I go into telling you actually some details about Bokashi composting, there's just 3 things to keep in mind. Okay, next slide. First, no landfill. If you do nothing else, picture no landfill. We don't want any of this to go to the landfill. Okay, and then number 2, next slide. It makes great soil. It really belongs in the soil and puts the carbon in the ground. And it's really a role that gardeners, you know, that's our role, is to put the carbon back in the ground. We may have, we may have these cars that don't run on fossil fuels, so we are limiting that, but to actually contribute back to the soil is by putting this organic waste back into the ground. So remember that, that's number 2. And number 3, I think this is an important thing to remember, that it's really good that everybody came today, because that is the first step in making a change of habit, is being educated or to know what's happening. So if you do nothing else for this year but have attended this presentation, that is good. That is really good. And if you do anything more than that, like you win a Bokashi bucket, that's even better. But if for some reason you forget to fill it, or you set it aside for a while, don't feel so defeated. Just feel like it's a break, and that you have some knowledge base that you will apply again in the future. So you can see all these things here. Nothing is always on a complete upswing, but any effort in that direction is a good idea. So everybody should just pat themselves on the back. That's it. Okay, so let's start on the next slide. Okay, so what is Bokashi? And I underline simple here because if I can do it, it's got to be simple. That's true. And so it's a simple method. I can do it, and it includes recycling of food waste and meat and dairy, which for those of you that are familiar with the traditional compost method, this is a plus, that you can put all of your kitchen waste into your bucket. And in addition, on the next slide, your traditional composting is what you call an aerobic process. You stick it in the bin and there's air going on, and what also happens in that is that it is doing a little bit of rotting or emitting of the CO2 into the air. Methane gas is coming off in the process of composting. Whereas in the Bokashi method, because you're using a closed container, special microorganisms in the sweet bran mixture, it's totally anaerobic. So it's like pickling or fermenting your food waste. So one key point is that after 2 weeks, when you open the lid, you think nothing has happened. Well, it's kind of like a pickle, where it still looks like a cucumber, right? It hasn't changed its shape, but it hasn't rotted, and all the nutritive value of your food waste remains inside. It's just that the composition has changed, so that when you stick it into the ground, and all the other microorganisms and the soil breaks it down quickly into good soil. So the key difference between traditional composting and this is, one is with traditional has air, and this one is no air. So as it says there with the checks, no air, no rotting, no greenhouse gases emitted, and most important, if you do it right, no foul smell. That's a plus. Okay, next slide. So like I said, it's easy enough for me to do, and this video that I have here is a little bit for my sake, because if you had come to my workshop, we would all be making Bokashi together. So we would all be doing this together, and I would be talking and explaining what you were doing, and the importance of the ingredients that were going into what you were making. But today, we're not making it together. So if you could just pretend that you're doing what I'm doing in the slide, that would be good. And I also can send you a recipe for a home version, so you could do it by yourself. But here I am making Bokashi for you. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make Bokashi. It's really very easy to make. I have to admit though, if you were to make it in a large quantity, it would be a lot cheaper. But for today, we'll start with a small recipe, and you can decide if you like to do it and would like to make it in a larger quantity. But today I'm going to make a recipe for 4 pounds of Bokashi wheat bran. Okay, so it's very easy. We're just going to start with 3 liquids, the active ingredient, molasses, and water. Mix them together and then stick them with the wheat bran. Okay, so 3 cups of water. This is the active ingredient. There's 3 categories of microorganisms in this. It's called ProBio. You can buy it online. The first category of microorganisms deter rotting and encourages fermenting, which is what we want in this process of Bokashi composting. So I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons. The other 2 categories of microorganisms, one enriches your soil, promotes enrichment of your soil, and the other promotes plant growth. So 1.5 tablespoons of that, and then a little bit of food for the microorganisms. So we're going to add, again, 1.5 tablespoons, this time, of organic molasses. 1.5. This isn't a tablespoon. It's called a 15 Japanese. I learned that this equates 1.5 tablespoons of your active ingredient. It's oftenly called EM1, and 1.5 tablespoons of organic molasses. Stirring. Okay, so I call what we're making today Bokashi bran because we're using wheat bran as our carbon substrate. In other parts of, actually in California, they may use rice bran. And if you go online, you'll see that people use newspaper and really any other type of carbon substrate. I found the ease and convenience of using the wheat bran, which is in Southern California a pretty reasonable product to buy. Okay, so for this recipe, it's for 4 pounds of wheat bran, but for my convenience, I like to mix in units of 2 pounds. So hopefully you have a scale at your home. If not, if you happen to have a KFC 8-piece chicken bucket and you fill it to the inner brim here, that's 2 pounds worth. But as you can see, it's really kind of gone down in level because just like a cereal box, it just kind of settles down. But this is 2 pounds of wheat bran. And then I'm going to add only, since this is only 2 pounds, I'm going to add half of our mixture, or 1.5 cups. That to the dry bran. Okay. For those that do baking, then you'll understand that sometimes, well, you put liquid into your flour and the liquid just seems to disappear, but the more that you mix it or knead it, then you realize the whole texture changes from just a dry, powdery substance to more of a crumbly substance. And that's kind of what I want to do here, is to mix in this liquid to the wheat bran. I wouldn't go quickly at this process. It's key that the liquid totally mixes in with the wheat bran. For those of you that don't like to get your hands dirty, maybe someone else should do this step. Or You can buy a finished Bokashi brand product online. A lot more expensive though. And for the rest of us that like to make mud pies and like to make bread, it's kind of a fun process. When I do this workshop live and in person, not too long ago, people would say it smells like making bread because the liquid makes the smell of the wheat bran lift, and it smells like you're making bread. For those that weren't familiar with making bread, someone thought it smelled like cucumbers. I don't know how that happened. But a lot agreed that they thought it smelled like shoyu. But I'll let you decide yourself if you decide to make your own Bokashi brand. Okay, so this is getting more to the consistency that looks mixed. It's crumbly, it's a little darker in color, and not so powdery as it was before I added the liquid. As you can kind of see, smells like bread. Okay. One of the tests that I was taught is that if you grab a handful of it and squeeze it, and if it clumps, then it's ready. Okay, so the next step is that we want the microorganisms from this to inoculate or embed into the wheat bran, so we want to stick it into a plastic bag because these microorganisms grow in an anaerobic or a no air environment. I don't know if you can see from the video, but I kind of made a mess. So another note, if you're going to make this, I use this bowl for demonstration purposes, but you might want to use a container that isn't so wide mouthed, because now to transfer all of this into a bag about this size is kind of a fancy trick. So instead, this has been mixed and you'll want to transfer it to a bag like this. Okay. Now the key thing before you close this bag is that you want to get all the air out. So I push down the corners first, get all the air out of the pocket corners, both sides like this. And then I push down the side and the other side. It is kind of fun to make it in a group because everybody has different styles of how they pack this in. But the key thing is to get the air out. So, okay, so now I have the corners packed and the sides packed. And then I'm just going to press down, take all the air out. It's starting to remind me of a shape that I couldn't remember, so my daughter and I looked it up online. It's called a bolillo, kind of a Mexican bread that looks this shape, maybe a little bit smaller, but kind of a football shape maybe. Okay, so now I have those, I think I have a lot of the air out, and then I'm just going to spin it, fold it over, I have a rubber band handy. Just going to tie it up like this. Okay, so for 2 weeks, I'm going to put this either in a dark plastic bag in an out-of-way, quiet place, or you can put it in a cupboard, a dark spot, maybe at room temperature, not too hot, not too cold. And you're just going to let it rest, and the microorganisms then will embed into the wheat bran. So after 2 weeks, it should begin to have white spots in it. See this white spot here? This is an okay white mold that is indicating that the microorganisms from this have embedded into your wheat bran. Okay, so when that happens, that's a good sign. Don't let it turn black because it means you waited too long. Okay, so when it's white, then you want to open the bag and dry it totally out. As long as it's in this anaerobic, wet situation, it'll continue to grow, and you don't want it to overgrow and have other microorganisms begin to compete with what you want to have in your wheat bran. So you just get like a paper bag, and you just empty this contents into the bag. I might put it out in my front yard, fluff it up, maybe for a day. Today it's pretty warm, maybe a day and a half, and then I'll feel it. And as long as it's dry, then the microorganisms will become inactive and stable until I sprinkle it onto my food waste. In my kitchen, this is how I store it, just like this. It's dry, it won't grow anymore till I take some out and sprinkle it onto my food waste. So here, it's ready to go. In summary of what I just showed you, first step is to mix all the ingredients together, put it into a plastic bag, take all the air out that you can, wait 2 weeks, open it up, stick it in a bag, dry it out, and stick it in a container, and it's ready to use. You're ready to go in your waste food recycling efforts. Okay, the next question is, how do you use it? So next slide. Okay, so I did see in the chat someone did want the recipes, so I'm not very good at multitasking, but after we're done here, I will send it to Andrea and she can forward it on to the recipe to the rest of you. So just in summary, our Hito's Bokashi Club at this time, I have become Amy's Bokashi Factory, and you're able, just 1 second more. So you can order through the JCCC website, and that link I've already given to Andrea, so she can include that as well. Or you can have your own recipe, and if you have any thoughts about, as I mentioned, you can get the microbe liquid online, and the wheat bran, the best price is if you do it in volume, which I buy in a 40-pound bag, is from a feed store. So just keep that in mind. And of course, as I mentioned, out of curiosity, you may just want to go online to see how much it costs. It's because someone else is making it, it does cost more, but it's kind of fun to go and check that out. Or once in a while, you may see it at a market, but there you might want to do a little more research because the makers of them may not have the same active ingredients in them, so it may not produce the same results if you buy a ready-made product in a store. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the next short recording is, how do you use the bokashi you made? Okay, so I think there's one more. Okay, good. Okay.
Press play.
That's fine. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how do you use bokashi. And before I start, I just want to give you a little bit of perspective. Bokashi wheat bran is made with this active ingredient, probio or EM1. And really there are many uses, very useful uses of this product. A very common one though is to mix this in and dilute it down and to inoculate it into wheat bran. And that's the demonstration that I'm going to do today. So in my kitchen, I have this bokashi wheat bran that's been dried, and I can just have it in a container. And I have a food waste collection bucket. It's a bucket with a screw top lid, and it's really 2 buckets. The top bucket you can see has holes in it, so it becomes like a drain, In the bottom bucket, no holes. So keep this in my kitchen like this. And then depending if I'm cooking a lot or cooking a little, if I'm cooking a lot, I'll put maybe a pie pan on my kitchen counter. And then as I'm chopping and there's scraps there or whatever, I'll load it into the pie pan. And then at the end of whatever I'm making, meal I'm making, then I will open the lid and put whatever scraps that I have into the bucket. I wait because really how this system works is in an anaerobic situation, no air. So the less time that I have to open my bucket lid in a day, the better. So let's pretend instead of having a pie tin of my scraps, sample of what I might have had that I collected for a while. So you can see what I can collect and what I can throw in here. For starters are all your greens, all your cuttings, potato peels, carrot peels, whatever. And here's my fruit, any of the fruit seeds, fruit stems, and then something which maybe your other composting methods did not have, you can put meat, and here I have meat bones. If you're going to have meat bones, these are my favorite meat bones to have. They're Colby meat bones, only because they've already been chopped and broken down. But that's the second point that I want to make, is that the smaller chopped the pieces are, then the more this bokashi mixture can attach itself to the surface and help to ferment, not rot, and to begin to get it ready for breaking down in your soil. So I collect these, stick them in the bucket, and for maybe about an inch or layer of food, then I just go in here, get a handful, and sprinkle it in my bucket, and put the lid back on. So maybe one day I clean out my refrigerator and found a lot of things that I forgot about. So also what can go into your bucket are prepared leftover food, your doggy bag food that you forgot to eat or didn't want to eat anymore. So the leftover McDonald's hamburger, whatever, all that can go into here. Just every time, add in more bokashi, add in more of this. The only thing you shouldn't put in there is like really moldy food, because the mold then will offset the balance of what these microorganisms in this are trying to do. So no heavily molded objects. But other than that, it can all go into your bucket.
Interesting.
And just continually sprinkle in some bokashi. As I was advised, if it has a rotting smell, add more bokashi. Okay. And one point, okay, so always put the lid back on. This. When I started doing this process, one of the first things I fully realized was how much waste I created, how much I forgot of things in the refrigerator, and how many things I thought I liked the fruit, but maybe it wasn't as sweet as I thought, but I left it in the refrigerator. So it reminds me about careful shopping, and then a little bit more vigilant about eating or sharing. So anyway, I'm sure you have a lot of lessons to learn when you start to put your food waste into your bucket. Okay, so you're going to make this lasagna method of food waste bokashi, food waste bokashi. And every time that you add to it, look and see what's happening in your bucket. If there seems to be starting to have a lot of white, moldy look in there, I would then stop, tighten the lid, and set it aside for 2 weeks. And then it'll be ready to bury in the ground. If you fill your bucket up very quickly, again, tighten the lid down, set it aside for 2 weeks, and then take the lid off, dig a hole, and bury it. And one other key point is you recall that this is a double bucket set, and the top bucket holes in it. So if you're cooking a lot with greens, a lot of napa, a lot of cabbage, and you create liquid, the liquid will start to collect in the bottom. The liquid will start to smell. So I would check this every few days, and if you start to see liquid collecting, this is what I would do. I would empty it down any one of the drains in your home, because the active microorganisms that are in this liquid will then begin to, in a non-toxic way, eat away all the gunk, all the clogs in your drain. So it's a natural drain cleaner. So that's very good. If your drains are clear and running, if you want to dilute it 1 to 100 parts of water, then you can also use it as fertilizer in your garden. So just, even if you forget and throw it down your drain, it's a good idea. Okay. So good luck and happy Bokashi eating. Okay, so before we get to do after the 2 weeks, just one other note. Do remember about the liquid in the bottom of your bucket and check for that. And just kind of be curious about what's happening in your bucket. So it's a good way for you to bond with your food waste. That's how I feel. After this 2-week period and you open it up, you'll start to see like this white, filmy, fungusy kind of texture on the top. It means that it's ready, that the microorganism has embedded now into your food waste. So one way is to dig a hole in your garden and then empty the contents of your bucket into the ground, and then I kind of chomp it up a little bit with a shovel and then just cover it with dirt. And then 2 weeks later, you can begin to plant your seeds on top of it. And 4 weeks from the time that you bury it, it's like a magic trick, because unless you filled it up rib bones, you won't even know that you buried there. It's that quickly the fermented or the pickled food waste just dissipates and goes back into soil. So I find it very magical and kind of fun to try. So in summary, on the next slide, even being proud of what you collect for your food waste, really in the bigger picture, only buy what you need and use what you buy or share what you buy or make, and then be proud that you are beginning to recycle your organic waste. And on the next slide, just in summary, it's easy to use Bokashi. You just collect it, sprinkle, put the lid on it, and 2 weeks later, you bury it. That's it. Okay, so good luck to you all.
Thank you, Amy. Oh my gosh, that was you really exceeded. I mean, it's so amazing. I've been in your in-person workshops, and this was obviously nothing can compare to being in person, but this is a very impressive presentation considering our virtual constraints. So thank you so much. There were some questions in the chat that I am going to illuminate. The first one, well, actually, here's one from Alejandra. She says, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what it is that is causing the breakdown. So I think I'm having a hard time understanding what the molasses is for. Are we attracting microorganisms to start the decomposition process?
I don't have it with me here. Can we go back to gallery scene so I could see everybody?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to stop share.
So who am I talking to? Oh, Alejandra.
Right here. Hi. Hi.
Okay. Well, thanks for your question. And Okay, so the key ingredient is that liquid because it has this balance of microorganisms in it. And this is, a lot of people have liquids that stop rotting, but this is a combination of three types of microorganisms that they've been able to coexist that then stops the rotting and then enhances the soil and then allows for the plants to absorb the nutrients from the soil. So that's why it's kind of a complete product to put onto your food and enhance your ground with. So, and the molasses is just to feed the microorganisms as they grow into your wheat bran. So, yeah,
So would it be similar to like an inoculant?
it is an
Would it be
inoculant.
similar? Okay. Okay, cool. I'm understanding it a little better now. Thank you.
I, I should have probably just used inoculant, but I thought maybe it wasn't as a familiar of a term. And this year with COVID, I don't know what people would think inoculation meant. So anyway, but you're right. You're right.
Nice. Let's see if there's any other questions. Recipe questions. Letty mentioned, I think she popped off. She mentioned having tried Bokashi before. Oops, sorry, Andrea. Were you saying something? Oh, she looked for a recipe.
Sorry, there was a question about how big the food scraps are.
Uh,
The
as I
bokashi.
mentioned, if you had a half a loaf of bread, that's kind of a big chunk to stick into your bucket. So I would say I would chop it down. If it were a loaf of bread, I would chop them into cubes at least 2 by 2 by 2 inches. I mean, so first of all, you don't want to fill your one bucket with one big chunk of something. So chopping it up also helps to layer into your bucket. And the whole idea of the smaller the pieces, the more the bokashi bran is able to cover it over and embed into or inoculate into whatever you put into the bucket. It just speeds it up. So, but like I said about the bones, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't run into the challenges of bones. But bones will take longer to break down. So if your house is kind of a Fred Flintstone and eat a lot of big bones, that you might want to create a separate hole that you dig in just to allow for that hole to take longer time to break down than all the rest of your food. If it's just meat, I was really surprised. I was told this and I had to test it out. Meat actually breaks down faster than the cellulose in plants. So the meat itself is not a problem in your recycling cycle. Um, for some of you who, I live in Monterey Park and the soil here is like hard. So, the whole idea of digging a hole, wasn't very appealing to me. So the first couple times that I did this, I had to make like shallow furrows and kind of just pat it down and kind of layer the dirt on top. But eventually, these microorganisms help to break down the soil and to create deeper, better soil. So now I'm able to shovel deeper in. But that is one challenge. Some people, and I think maybe we all, if you stay up at night, you may have critters in your yard from possums to skunks that they would, once they buried in one spot, they would either move a trash can on top of that spot for 2 weeks until things broke down, or if you had clay tile pieces or something, just to lay down and move around just to get it past the point of it breaking down. But that's another challenge if you have critters in your neighborhood. Um, yeah.
I have I have a question. Sorry, I don't mean to cut. There was somebody Ryan, were you gonna ask something?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's so cool that you can add like you're saying in the video, you can add like a McDonald's hamburger to it. I think that's super cool. So I was just wondering, I guess, does it matter if it's like oily foods, like let's say I made like an Alfredo or something like that that's got like a bunch of oil in it. Can I add that to the
Yeah.
bokashi?
I have not seen any problem at all with adding oily food. I just wouldn't add if you did a big frying pan of frying oil, I wouldn't add that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also in the video, when you're talking about the, I think it was the wheat bran, is that what it's called? You mentioned you could use like anything that kind of has like a lot of carbon in it, like newspapers. So could you use like cardboard boxes as that? Would that something like that work?
You know, you can try that, and
Uh-huh.
I have tried the newspaper, and if you know, really, as you can imagine, all these questions. If you did a search online, somebody has tried to do it, but it seems like the newspaper. There was one man who was really a big advocate, but for everybody else, the newspaper, as you can imagine, kind of matted down, and it was just harder to make equal distribution of your microorganisms, and drying it out and using it was a little bit more cumbersome, where the wheat bran to me seemed to be manageable and economical enough that, you know, it's kind of the medium that works for me. But you can try, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of
Okay.
things. So yeah, it's kind of like your home time experiment on this. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It would be a good thing to experiment when we're back on campus to do maybe do 3 separate things, do newspaper, cardboard, and wheat bran, or find a source for rice bran or something. This would be a really fun thing to do on campus when we're back. I have a question about the 2-week sort of waiting period when you filled your bucket up and you need to put it aside and let it sort of do its thing before you bury it. During that 2-week period, obviously, you're likely still generating lots of food scraps and you're still cooking, presumably. And I know that we can put food scraps in the freezer and sort of hold them until the next round. Obviously, you can get another bucket and have a sort of 2-system thing going. But if you're putting your food scraps in your freezer while you're waiting for that 2-week period to pass, is it okay to put frozen scraps into the bokashi? Does the temperature of the scraps that you're putting into that you're mixing with the bran matter at all?
I have to say I haven't had a lot of experience in that, but um, my experience has been is not too much heat. Like you don't want to keep your dried bokashi in direct sun, so you want to keep it more at room temperature. Um, my guess would be for the frozen that you would just stick it in the bucket, and you know the freezing already helps in the breakdown of it, and you just may create more liquid in the bottom that you might have to worry about as you add the bokashi. But I think it should be fine. Your question about what to do if when your bucket is resting for 2 weeks was just the question that I had. And well, what do you do? And for those of you that are serious and like bokashi, all of us have ended up with 2 bucket sets. So we're always filling one and one is resting, and then when the resting is done, I'm going to bury it and then move the one I just filled to the back porch. So it's a 2 bucket collection set. But in the beginning, when you're not sure you want to make the investment or not, you know, freezing is an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good idea too. Oh, and the one other point I was going to talk about in digging, for those of you that don't have a place to dig in, um, there's an idea which I've seen adapted. Is, you know, if you look up soil factory, which means that you know you have like just a plastic bin box with half with soil or dirt in it that you just bury in, that you can use in the cycle of 2 weeks and mixing it up, and then either using it for potting soil or sharing it, or then taking it someplace as finished compost and soil. So just a box in your patio, excuse me, is a good idea.
I hope she's okay. Hey, you okay, Amy? It's like so heart rattling to hear people cough or sneeze or like show any kind of sickness. You okay?
I'm just choked up about bokashi.
Oh gosh. Oh, well, are there any other questions? Any other questions? Yeah, Stephanie.
I have one follow-up question. Amy, I just wanted to thank you for this presentation. I thought it was amazing. I really want to get started and hopefully contribute to Sustainable Little Tokyo and just buying some of the wheat bran and trying to make my own. But I was curious to know if we wanted to do the bucket system that do it ourselves, could we use like the buckets that we buy from Home Depot, or would you recommend the tight sealed lid
Well,
for that
you
anaerobic
correctly
effect?
identified these buckets are from Home Depot.
Oh,
They're
okay.
2-gallon buckets. But from our experience, we initially would buy the simple pry-on pull-off lids. But for the amount of times that you open it, it was so difficult to get it locked back down and to pry it back off that I separately order these lids. So if you were to buy one, this rim then just locks onto your top bucket, and it has threads in it. And then this lid just quickly threads on and off. So it quickly makes it a sealed bucket, which when you do it every day, you really appreciate having this lid. So, but in the beginning, if you just want to try yourself, and then, you just have to drill holes in the top bucket so it'll drain into the bottom, right?
Okay,
So,
right, yeah. Yeah, I started vermicomposting, but poor little things, it was too hot, and they ended up dying. There wasn't anything left, so yeah, that was
Happens
my
to the
attempt.
best of us, Stephanie. Don't be hard on yourself.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I think this whole process, every day, especially now even with COVID, is an experiment. So, you just kind of try and think, oh my gosh, that's not it, and you try again,
right, yeah.
it's kind
Totally.
of fun in the process. So,
Yeah. All of these different composting methods, it's true, like some are well suited to some personality types and some are well suited to others. It's all about just finding the one that works well for you in your home with your yard or lack of yard or whatever it may be.
Definitely.
I'm kind of looking forward to visiting to your garden as well too. So,
Oh, we would love to have you when we're back on campus. So we hope that you'll come. We really, really hope that you'll come.
it's my name.
Especially since you're an alum. Any other questions, guys? Any other comments or anything?
Last one, yeah.
Yeah.
Last one. So I was just curious where we can buy the wheat bran from Sustainable Little Tokyo, the direct
Here's what,
website, or
I gave Andrea the link so that
right.
every other month
Oh, the
we have
JCC.
a Zoom workshop similar to what you have today, except yours is a little tailored because I did more on carbon. Um, and then there's an order period, and then right now we have pickup sites. So one is my house, and another is in Little Tokyo. So if you order by a certain day, then you have a choice of like a Saturday between 10 to 2 to come by, and you just text me, and then I just push it out the driveway, and then you can drive by and pick it up. So um, that's the arrangements for now. Otherwise, if we have a live workshop, then you would just register and how much you wanted to order. And then when you came, you would make it and then just take off with your bucket. So it's a one-stop. And if I could take a moment, Alicia, we have a holiday special because we're trying to support a hardware store. I don't know how many of you know about this hardware store in Little Tokyo, but it's like an old-fashioned, all-complete hardware store. It's called Onzen Hardware. But anyway, so we're selling an Onzen hardware gift pack. And first off, I want to show you that they come into these neat little, let's see, you can see but I made these bags. And what they are is recycled calendars. So this, as you can imagine, is a yoga doll calendar. So all of these gift bags are calendars. And in a gift bag is a Japanese tawashi, which is a vegetable scrubbing brush. It's called it says tawashi on it, which is Japanese for scrub brush. And then this is a Japanese, they call it a sod sickle. So you can see it's really hand sized, and it's for doing close gardening. for your vegetable garden, but it's called at least it's translated. It's in Japanese. It's called a kawa, but it says here a sod sickle. And then the last thing is 3 seed packs.
Awesome.
So this is Japanese purple mustard, which is kind of a spicy mustard. And this one here you recognize as, let's see, this is komatsuna, which is kind of like a spinach. And then some of you may know what daikon is, but it's like a long white carrot. These are special ones that have adapted into like radish size, which for me is a better challenge because I can't grow anything too deep in my ground, right? So these little round balls are very good. And then this one here is a special one, is a green that you add to your soup on New Year's Day called mizuna. So, but they have all these different kind of English and Japanese seeds in this hardware store. Or we have a gift pack for the holidays. So anyway, when you go to that website, you'll see that you can order if you're interested as well. So thank you. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. I'll ask Andrea to drop that link in the chat again. And Alejandra is saying that they have the best gardening tools and Japanese specialty tools. She loves them. Awesome. Referring to the cool.
It's a cool place to visit. Yeah.
What is it called again?
ANZEN.
Anzen. Oops, that was to him.
Yeah, Anzen, and it's very old. If you look it up online, this man, the original man, this is the son, or he's not a friend, he's a friend of the original man, but they're so old-fashioned, they don't even have a website, but KCET has done a special on him. So if you go on, if you look up Anzen, you're going to see KCET's highlight of this hardware store because it's so cool. So anyway.
Wonderful. Love that. Cool.
Worth the trip.
All right, you guys.
Yeah.
So to finish off today, if nobody has any more questions, we'll finish off with our raffle winners and see who's won Bokashi, 3 Bokashi kits. Well, 1 each. 3 winners, Bokashi kit each, and then I'll arrange with you on how to pick it up. I'm gonna pick them up from Amy, and then I'll work with the winners to make sure that they get into your hands. So I'll hand it over to Hannah.
Hello. So I'm gonna share. Could I share my screen?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So we had 7 responses so far.
Pretty good.
And we're gonna have 3 winners. So we'll get started.
That is really cute.
Ari. Congratulations, Ari. Michaela, congratulations. And our last winner. Congratulations, Brooke.
Nice. Congratulations, all. Thank you guys all so much for being here. If you, Hannah, you have all of their email addresses to follow up?
Yes, I was just going to write down their names so I don't forget.
Perfect. Yeah, if you won, you can drop your email in the chat and I will follow up with you, or Hannah and I will both follow up with you. Amy, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time. This has just been really special and we look forward to a long-standing partnership with you and with Sustainable Little Tokyo.
I hope so. I hope we can maybe share your group at one of our workshops as a neighborhood garden.
That would be wonderful.
That'd be good.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. Enjoy your days. Good luck with finals, everyone.
Finals.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Thank
you.
You're
guys.
welcome. You're
Bye.
welcome. See you again.
Thank you, Amy.
Oops, let me stop recording.